to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
Despite constitutional guarantees, Americans' civil rights and liberties are constantly in danger of violation, whether by individuals, corporations, or government institutions. Regardless of whether personal prejudices or national security concerns lie at the root of these violations, challenging them and holding wrongdoers accountable is imperative for the sake of the constitutional integrity and the preservation of the American way. Trial lawyers advocate for awareness, the truth, and a person's right to know. They believe that in the absence of the truth, all of us stand helpless to defend ourselves, our families, our health, and our way of life. Oftentimes, we don't think about or worry about or understand what is happening to another until it happens to us. Deceits have no boundaries. Disease doesn't recognize the color of our skin or our political party's affiliation. When it comes to cover-ups and false allegations by agencies of the state and the federal government, there is not a soul amongst us who does not have a cringing fear of their overwhelming, awesome power. It is at these times that we need experienced and dedicated trial lawyers, the warriors in the courtroom, who are willing to battle for us tooth and nail in the halls of justice to protect our cherished way of life. Today, the Insider exclusive TV series examines civil rights violations in this exclusive special, Prison Abuse, the Neville Rangolan story, and how famed New York-based civil rights lawyer Bob Ginsburg, partner at Ginsburg and Wolf, got justice for Neville. Bob has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best civil rights trial lawyers in New York and in the nation. He has seen many innocent and hardworking people become victims of prison brutality. He understands that prison brutality is one of the most serious, enduring, and divisive human rights violations in the United States. The problem is not just in New York, but nationwide, and its nature is institutionalized. And because of that, he is driven to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. He learned a long time ago that if a man hasn't discovered something he will die for, he isn't fit to live. His goals, not only to get justice for his clients, but to make sure all Americans, incarcerated or not, have the same right as any other citizen, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and justice and power must be brought together so that whatever is just may be powerful, and whatever is powerful may be just. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from New York City. It is my great pleasure to introduce Bob Ginsburg to the show. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Tell our audience a little bit about your law practice. What type of law do you practice?
In a general way, what I do is called plaintiff's personal injury litigation. And I'm a trial lawyer, but that doesn't mean I don't do work in the office also. The plaintiff's personal injury practice that I have consists of 4 or 5 subdivisions. It runs anywhere from police brutality cases, such as the one we'll be talking about, to medical malpractice, to simple automobile accidents, to construction accidents, and what has become fairly prominent recently because of a change in the law are what are called slip and fall or trip and fall on sidewalk cases. And I handle all of the above.
Okay. Today we are going to be discussing a real remarkable case, one that involved a prison inmate that was assaulted by another inmate. And I'd like you to tell our audience a little bit about some of the facts, but before you get into that,
Sure.
Your client, Neville Rangolan,
Yes.
okay, tell our audience a little bit about who he was and how you met him.
Okay. Well, the answer is Neville Rangolan was a Jamaican immigrant. He was married at the time with a child. And unfortunately, like other people who have not found another livelihood, he made some of his monies in selling drugs.
Yes.
In terms of how I met him, the basic answer is that I get close to 90% of my cases from other lawyers. So in this particular case, it was another lawyer who Mr. Rangolan had consulted, who is not a super lawyer in personal injury work the way I am, who recommended the case to me.
Right. Now, Neville had been arrested. He was in custody, and the police basically found out that he could provide information on another drug dealer, a bigger drug dealer, right?
That is correct.
And so he provided this information, and he, in the eyes of the law, is considered a confidential informant, correct?
That is correct, yes,
Okay.
100%.
So while he was incarcerated, the police went out and arrested this other drug dealer that he had provided information for.
That is correct, except you left out one tiny step.
Yes.
According to Mr. Rangolan, what happened is there came a point when he refused to continue to inform. And at that point, the police put him in jail, and then the rest is 100% correct. They arrested the other drug dealer who was a much, much bigger drug dealer and put him in the same prison.
Bigger in terms of the amount of crime that he commits, correct?
Correct.
Now, usually in prisons they have rules where they do not put confidential informants in with the people that they have informed against. And the reasons are obvious, you know, and that's what this case is all about. So please tell us what happened to Neville.
Okay, first of all, there's a dispute. It's our position that what happened is because the Neville refused to cooperate any further with the police, not only did they put him in prison, but they also intentionally put the other drug dealer in the same cell block.
So they were going to punish him.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. It was, and I don't know if I should get into this at this time, but it was the correction department's position that it was not intentional at all.
Right.
That a correction guard who never had done anything like this before, when looking at the record, which specifically said, do not put them in the same cell block, that this correction officer missed the entry, and by accident, they got in the same cell block.
Yeah, now I want to inform our audience, this is no accident, because on the file cover of every inmate, if they are a confidential informant, there are very large letters that say CI on the cover. There is no mistake, there's no fine print that a prison official could ever miss, okay? So what happened was the bigger drug dealer ended up in the cell, and he assaulted Neville Rangolan, and he fractured his skull, he stabbed him, and we happen to have with us right now some of the deposition which Neville is showing and talking about the injuries he suffered. So let's go to that right now.
Sure.
At any time that morning, did Stephen King strike you at all?
Yes,
And where were you when he hit you?
I was in my cell.
And where was he?
He was in my cell.
Did you see him coming into your cell?
No,
When did you first see him in your cell?
The first I see him in my cell is when I hear a big bang over my head and I fell on the floor and I was shaking and I looked over, I dropped my head. The hit that I get in my head moved my head back. So I was laying down on the bunk. The forces of the hit in my head, bang, it dropped my head and I fell back on the floor. And I see Stephen King and a brush.
A brush?
Yes, that they use and sweep outside, 16-inch between 6 to 24-inch brush.
A push
they
brush?
use. Push brush.
Okay. So then I believe you testified he took your pen and he stabbed you in the navel with your pen?
He reached over and take my pen. Then he go over, feel a pain in my navel because I was shaking. Then my eyes was like bleary. But I see him reach over and take the pen. Then I feel a pain in my navel. I passed out.
Where do you have pain?
In my head.
In your head?
24 hours a day.
Any specific part of your head or just...
Yeah.
Where?
Mostly on the right side of my head.
Do you have any scarring from this injury?
Yes.
Where?
On the right side of my head.
Can you look? Can you show me where it is?
Yeah.
But can the camera zoom in so we get this?
Scar. It's sinking. My head is sinking.
No, don't do anything with your hand. Just
Can you move
show it into the camera.
Just move your left arm. Just turn a little to your left side.
That's horrible, what happened to him. And of course, you were contacted to represent him by another lawyer.
Correct.
Because this is, in actuality, a civil rights violation, which you alleged, and the defense that the state, that the prison put up was...
It's the county.
The county, that it was a pure accident.
Correct.
Okay? And the judge, who I understand is a friend of yours, instructed the jury, what?
Well, what the judge did was worse than that.
Yeah.
What the judge did is he ruled that as a matter of law,
Yes.
there was no civil rights violation.
And in order to have a civil rights violation, you have to have an intent to commit the civil rights violation, right?
You are 100% correct.
It
yes.
cannot be an accident, can it?
Correct.
The state did not want, the county did not want to have this as a civil rights violation because, why?
Because in a civil rights violation, you are entitled to additional damages.
Yeah, more money.
More money in two areas. One is you can get punitive damages against the person who intentionally did this, and if that person, as in this case, works for the Department of Corrections, it would mean that Nassau County would have to pay that extra. And you can also get attorney's fees, which mean in a typical personal injury case, the attorney's fees are a percentage of what the plaintiff wins.
Yeah.
In a civil rights case,
It's an addition.
It's an addition, exactly.
Yeah. Now, you were so persuasive with the jury that despite the judge's instructions, and they were so incensed at what happened to your client, they came back with an amazing $1.6 million verdict, right?
That is correct.
Judge he was totally surprised by that, wasn't he?
Yes.
And what did he do as a matter of law?
He cut it in half.
He cut it in half, and he has that right to do that, correct?
The answer is what a judge has the right to do is to say to a plaintiff, pick this case, the jury gave you $1,600,000.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cutting it to $800,000, but he cannot force you to accept the $800,000.
Really?
What he does is he says, if you want the $800,000, sign a stipulation. If you don't want the $800,000, then everything gets thrown out, and you have to go through another trial.
So you accepted the 800?
We accepted the 800.
Okay, now let's talk about, because you have another prison civil rights case now,
Yes.
correct? And you
Well, I have a couple of them, but there's one
One in
that's
particular.
identical to this.
Yeah. Let's talk about civil rights. Let's talk about prison and police brutality, okay?
Okay?
Is race a factor?
In my opinion, it is.
Okay. In other words, if you happen to be black, if you happen to be Hispanic, there's probably a greater incidence of civil rights violations, right?
The answer is, in my opinion, yes, but I do not want to claim that I've
Right.
done 1,000 cases
Just
to get
through your
the statistics.
experience.
To my experience, definitely yes.
Now,
Every case of police brutality I've had, and I've gotten a number of $1 million verdicts, have all been against a minority person.
now, we're all glad that there are police out there. The vast majority are good people.
Yes.
The vast majority of prison officials are good people doing their job.
Yes.
But there is a group called problem officers, right?
The answer is, in my experience, yes, but again, I have not made a study
Yeah.
as to whether it's the same officers that keep repeating things
Yeah.
or whether they all do. I have not
Yeah.
done a
In
study.
the many shows that we have done,
Yes.
what I have traditionally found is even if there's just a few bad apples,
Yes.
right? The entire police, the entire prison administration has a code of silence. They stand up and protect the bad guys, don't they?
The answer to that is yes, with one exception.
Yes.
And that exception is the present case that I have, which, believe it or not, also involved a push broom and fracturing somebody's skull. What they did, and I've never seen this done in any other case, is the correction department, this was in New York City, they brought what's called a third-party claim. In this case, it was against the officer who let the broom out of the closet to give to the offending inmate.
You know, one of the reasons that we do this show is a lot of people might look at someone who's incarcerated, someone who's been convicted of a crime, as not having the same civil rights as someone who's walking the street and not committed a crime, correct? But
Absolutely.
they do have the same rights, don't they?
Yes.
They have the right to be protected. They have the right of security, correct?
Yes, in a sense, they have more rights
Yeah.
because they are in custody. So therefore, their only protection is from the correction officers. Whereas if you're walking the street, you know, you're to some extent exposed to dangers that have nothing to do with being in prison.
Yeah. You know, in this case, there was an original $1.6 million verdict.
Yes,
The judge reduced it to $800,000.
yes.
So the question is, when people watch this show, is how do you determine what is a good settlement, like in this situation? Besides asking your client, which you're required to do,
Yes.
how do you determine that $800,000 is a good settlement?
Okay, the answer to that, and I'll complicate it 1 second with this case. The answer to that is that all of us, I mean, I've been trying for cases for years and years, and I have a general idea as to what juries will do with a fractured hip,
Yeah.
with a fractured skull, etc. Plus, of course, each case you have to add. In other words, somebody might get a fractured skull who was a lawyer and can never practice law again. So that obviously will be a much bigger verdict. So we lawyers have to base it on experience.
Yeah.
But in this case, which I think you sort of alluded to at the beginning, a jury can be really inflamed about what a defendant has done. You know, to pick a simple example, if a car is going 5 miles over the speed limit and it hits somebody, the car is negligent and the person will be entitled to a verdict. On the other hand, if a car is going 100 miles an hour in a 30-mile zone, the jury is going to be really inflamed against that person and give extra money to the person who's injured beyond the injury. So what I believe happened in this case is because of Judge Spatz's instructions, the jury gave more money than the injury was worth. I think the reduction to the $800,000 is probably fair, that it was about what it was worth. But if I had gotten a civil rights violation with, as I mentioned, the attorney's fee and, very important, punitive damages, punishing the prison system for what they did, then that would justify the $1.6 million. So I think what the jury did, even though Judge Spat did not give them that charge, because I had a summation, is that they gave the extra money because they were angry at what Nassau County did.
Yeah, well, thank God we have lawyers like you who are willing to protect and represent even incarcerated people, especially when their civil rights are violated. And I want to thank you very much for joining us on this show. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll just add one other thank God, which is that we have jurors who can react with a sense of justice, even if the judge steers them a little bit in the wrong direction.
Okay.
And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.